Call the cops, the HOA president shrieked, her voice echoing across Old Mill Lake as I planted private property signs on my newly bought land. She dialed 911, fuming that I dared to block her neighborhood's access to my lakefront. But that call, it handed me the legal ammo to shut down their entitled trespassing for good. I snagged 40 acres of this historic lake, complete with crumbling mill ruins, for just $15,000 at a tax auction. Dream deal, right? Wrong. The HOA had been treating my property like their personal resort for decades. When Dolores Whitmore stormed over with 2 officers, her designer boots crunching frozen gravel, she sneered, "We've got rights to this lake." One airtight legal notice later, those rights vanished. Have you ever faced an HOA bully? Drop your story below. I'm reading everyone from my cabin by the lake. Let me back up and tell you how I ended up in this mess. My name's Garrett Thornfield, and 6 months ago, I was a completely different guy. 52 years old, 20-year marriage down the drain, watching my ex-wife drive off with half my assets in her brand new BMW. The divorce left me broken, and back in Settles, Ohio, living in the farmhouse my grandfather built with his own hands. I'm an electrician by trade, always been good with my hands. But after losing everything, I needed something bigger than weekend repair jobs. That's when I spotted the courthouse notice. Tax auction, Old Mill Lake property, 40 acres including Lake Mill ruins. Access road, the courthouse, basement rear of musty files and burnt coffee. As I researched the property, previous owner was Morton Blackwood, an 80-year-old recluse who'd owned it for 40 years when he died. His California heirs wanted nothing to do with Ohio real estate. 3 years of unpaid taxes, their loss. My jackpot Old Mill Lake sits like a hidden gem between rolling farmland land and Willowbrook Estates subdivision. 15 acres of spring-fed water surrounded by mature oaks, plus those gorgeous 1890s mill ruins. Limestone foundations, solid as a fortress, watery gone, but the mechanism intact. I could already picture my fishing guide business, maybe some tiny home rentals. Perfect fresh start. What I didn't expect was meeting the neighborhood dictator on day one. Picture every HOA horror story you've ever heard, then add designer boots and a fake smile. Dolores Whitmore, 58, perfectly bleached hair, real estate agent, and 8-year president of Willowbrook Estates HOA. The white Lexus with blessed license plates should have been my first clue she'd make my life hell. I'd just finished walking the property when voices echoed from the mill ruins. 20-some people sat in folding chairs like outdoor church. Dolores stood front and center with her clipboard, voice dripping, "Honey, the Christmas Lake Festival will be our biggest yet. Morton always loved seeing families enjoy this special place." That's when I cleared my throat. "Excuse me, folks. I'm Garrett Thornfield. I bought this property yesterday." Record scratch moment. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me. The smell of wood smoke from someone's backyard fire mixed with Dolores's overpowering perfume as silence stretched uncomfortably. "Oh." Her smile froze like winter lake ice. "You must be the new owner. Morton always let us use this space. I'm sure you'll honor that arrangement." Here's where I made my first mistake. I tried being reasonable. I appreciate the tradition, but I'm planning a business here. Need to control access for insurance reasons. You know that sound when you accidentally step on a cat? That's what escaped from half the crowd. Parents whispered about ruined holidays. Teenagers rolled their eyes like I'd canceled Christmas. Dolores stepped closer, close enough that I could count her perfectly applied fake eyelashes. "You're new here, honey. You'll learn how things work. We take care of each other. We honor traditions." The way she said honey made my skin crawl like addressing a slow child who couldn't grasp adult concepts. "I'm sure we can work something out," I said, already backing toward my truck. That's when she delivered the threat wrapped in small-town politeness. We'll see about that, honey. We'll just see. Next morning I arrived with basic private property, no trespassing signs. Nothing fancy, just standard hardware store signs to establish boundaries. Took me 20 minutes to post them around the main access points. I left to grab supplies at the hardware store. Came back 2 hours later to find every single sign torn down, scattered in the lake like expensive confetti. And there stood Dolores with 2 police officers, looking like she just caught Al Capone red-handed. There he is, officers, the one disturbing our community traditions. That's when I realized this wasn't going to be about reasonable compromise. This was war. Officer Reginald Murphy stepped out of his cruiser like he was responding to a bank robbery instead of a property dispute. Thick-set guy with a mustache that belonged in 1985, wearing the kind of scowl that said he'd already decided who the bad guy was. Turns out Dolores was his cousin. Small towns, am I right, sir? We've received complaints about you harassing community members, Murphy announced, hand resting on his belt like I might make a run for it. I gestured toward my torn-down signs floating in the lake. Harassing someone destroyed my property. Those signs were disturbing the peace. Dolores chimed in, clutching her purse like it contained the crown jewels. This lake has been community space for 20 years. Murphy nodded sagely like she'd just quoted constitutional law. Maybe you should reconsider your approach here, Mr. Thornfield. Learn how things work in our community. They left me with diesel fumes hanging in the cold air and a warning about maintaining community harmony. Translation: do what Dolores wants or else. The citation blitz started within days. First violation, improper vehicle storage for my truck parked on my own land. Second, unauthorized material storage for lumber I'd bought to repair the dock. Third, unpermitted signage for my replacement private property signs that apparently violated community aesthetic standards. Each citation carried a $150 fine and mandatory appearance before the town council, where guess who sat as community representative. But here's the thing about being pushed around. Sometimes you learn to push back. 20 years as an electrician taught me that contractors who try to screw you over usually have something to hide. Time for some research. The county courthouse basement became my second home. Hours breathing stale air and squinting at microfiche records that hadn't been touched since disco was popular. I remembered my grandfather always saying, "When someone's trying to steal from you, check the paperwork twice, smart man." Buried in those dusty files, I found the original 1890 deed. Handwritten in old-fashioned script, it included language that made my pulse quicken. Mineral and water rights in perpetuity, including all access routes necessary for said rights. My electrician buddy Jake once told me about a similar case where original deed language trumped decades of assumptions. People think they know property law, but the real power sits in those original documents. The professional boundary survey cost me $1,200 I couldn't afford, but watching the surveyor work was like Christmas morning. The metallic ping of his equipment echoed across the lake as he measured angles with laser precision. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered, checking calculations for the third time. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Your property line extends 15 feet into what everyone thinks is the public access road. That whole stretch where people drive to reach other lakefront houses, that's your land." The crunch of gravel under my boots took on new meaning as I walked that disputed road. Every car using it was trespassing, including Dolores. That night, I installed trail cameras among the trees like electronic spies. The forest smelled of pine needles and approaching winter as I positioned the tiny devices. Within 48 hours, I had footage that changed everything. There was Dolores, bringing real estate clients for private showings, marketing exclusive lake access as a premium selling point. I watched her gesture grandly toward my property, while explaining to buyers how they'd have private community amenities. She was literally selling access to land she didn't own. But the cameras caught more than fraud. Neighborhood teenagers dumping beer cans after midnight bonfire parties. One kid urinating against the mill ruins while friends cheered. Real respectful of that community tradition. The most infuriating footage, showed Dolores walking her dog along my restored shoreline. The prissy little thing took a dump right where I'd planted native wild flowers. She looked directly at my camera, smiled that fake smile, and walked away without cleaning it up. Then came the environmental citation. Someone had report. Ed me for disturbing wildlife habitat because I'd been cleaning up trash. Her precious community kept dumping. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. But now I had ammunition, real evidence of what was actually happening here. Dolores wasn't protecting community traditions. She was running a real estate scam using my property as the selling point. When I called my insurance company to ask about liability coverage for public access, their response was immediate. Sir, if you're allowing unauthorized public use of your property, your coverage is void. One drowning lawsuit could cost you everything. The next morning, Dolores escalated again. A county inspector arrived claiming I was violating environmental regulations by unauthorized land disturbance. Turns out he was her golf buddy. As I watched him write up violations for cleaning trash off my own land, I realized this wasn't about traditions or community harmony. This was about money. Specifically, Dolores making money by selling something she didn't own. Time to show her what actual property rights looked like. Dolores wasn't playing games anymore. She was playing for keeps. The certified letter from the State Environmental Protection Agency made that crystal clear. Someone had filed a complaint claiming I was planning a massive commercial marina that would destroy local wildlife. The smell of burned coffee filled Rebecca's law office as she read the complaint aloud. A Hundlip marina with restaurant and hotel facilities. Garrett, this is completely fabricated. Who filed this? One guess. But Dolores had made a critical mistake. My cousin Rebecca had spent 15 years fighting corporate polluters, and she knew environmental law inside out. Small fishing operations like mine were specifically exempt from commercial reviews, filing false information with government agencies. That's a felony. While Rebecca Prepa read our counterattack, the professional survey results arrived. The news was even better than expected. Not only did the access road cross my property for 200 yards, but Dolores's precious dock extended 8 feet onto my underwater land. Every lakefront homeowner had been trespassing for years, assuming Morton's neighborly permission created legal rights. As my grandfather used to say, assumption is the mother of all screw-ups. These folks were about to learn that lesson the hard way. Then I discovered what Dolores was really protecting. Public records tell beautiful stories when you know how to read them. I spent 3 days digging through property sales, listing descriptions, and marketing materials. What I found made my hands shake with anger. Over 5 years, Dolores had sold 12 lakefront homes. Every single listing bragged about exclusive community lake access and private waterfront amenities. The premium buyers paid for this exclusive access between $20,000 and $40,000 extra per home. Quick math, roughly $350,000 in fraudulent premiums. She'd been selling access to my property and pocketing the money. But wait, it gets better. Rebecca's investigation revealed Dolores was already on thin ice with the State Real Estate Board. 2 previous sanctions for misrepresenting property features. Currently on probation for hiding flood zone risks from buyers. 1 more violation would cost her license permanently. That's when she escalated to full-scale warfare. Save Our Lake Public Forum on preserving community access. The flyers appeared overnight in every Willowbrook Estates mailbox. Thursday night community center. She'd painted me as some corporate developer planning to destroy beloved family traditions and cancel Christmas. The description was masterful manipulation. Nobody wants to be the Grinch, right? While Dolores organized her public lynching, I was having different conversations. Real neighbors, not just HOA zombies. Turns out plenty of folks were sick of Dolores's reign of terror. Tom Kowalski cornered me at the gas station, exhaust fumes mixing with his frustration. That woman's been a nightmare for 8 years, measuring grass with rulers, finding people for Christmas decorations. Some of us are ready for revolution, Lisa Morgan whispered her horror stories at the grocery store. Mike Rodriguez shared Dolores's threats against his lawn business. A pattern emerged. She didn't just control lake access, she controlled everything. Then came the phone call that changed the game. Mr. Thornfield, this is Travis Morton, Uncle Morton's nephew. I heard about your troubles with the HOA. Travis had a box of Morton's papers that nobody bothered examining during a state settlement. Uncle Morton regretted letting them take over. He was planning to revoke access before he died, but couldn't face the confrontation. The cardboard box smelled of old paper and regret. Inside were Morton's handwritten notes documenting years of abuse, property damage, liability nightmares, broken promises about respect and responsibility. He'd kept meticulous records of every incident, but the real bombshell was his insurance correspondence. The company had been pressuring Morton for years to restrict public access due to massive liability exposure. One drowning, one injury lawsuit, and he'd lose everything. That's when I realized what Dolores was really fighting for. Without community lake access, her real estate empire would collapse overnight. All those premium sales based on my property, she'd face lawsuits, license revocation, maybe even criminal fraud charges. No wonder she was desperate. The morning of her town hall meeting, I got a surprise visitor. County Inspector Bradley Walsh, Dolores's golf buddy, showed up with another violation notice. This time for unauthorized environmental restoration because I'd been planting native species to prevent shoreline erosion. Mr. Thornfield, you can't just start changing the natural landscape without permits, he announced, clipboard ready. I handed him my phone, showing the trail camera footage. You mean I can't clean up beer cans and pizza boxes that your friend's community keeps dumping? His face went pale watching teenagers urinate on the mill ruins while Dolores's dog crapped in my wildflower garden. There's been a misunderstanding, he mumbled, backing toward his truck. Yes, there has been, I agreed, and it's about to get a lot bigger. That night, driving to the community center, I could smell wood smoke from early autumn fires. The sound of gravel crunching under my tires reminded me that every inch of that access road belonged to me. Time to remind everyone else. The community center buzzed with tension thick enough to cut with a butter knife. 70-something residents packed folding chairs while Dolores worked the room like a politician, her perfume creating a cloud of fake sweetness that couldn't mask the metallic smell of fear in the air. She'd done her homework. Poster boards displayed blown-up photos of families enjoying traditional lake activities. Kids fishing, Christmas festivals, summer picnics, all on my property, of course, but she conveniently left that part out. The woman could teach a masterclass in selective editing. We're here tonight to protect our community values, Dolores announced, voice dripping with righteous indignation. Some people want to steal Christmas from our children and turn our beloved lake into a commercial tourist trap. The crowd murmured approval. A few people glared at me like I'd personally kicked their puppies. I sat in the back, taking notes and staying quiet. My grandfather always said, let your enemies dig their own graves before. Ryu, hand them the shovel. That's when she dropped her legal bomb. I've consulted with an attorney, she continued, gesturing toward a nervous L-looking man in an ill-fitting suit. We have grounds to claim adverse possession. 20 years of continuous community use gives us legal rights to this property. Her brother-in-law, Larry, stepped forward, sweat beading on his forehead despite the community center's ancient heating system clanking like a dying robot. Adverse possession law is complex, but when a community has used property openly and continuously, wrong move, Larry. Dead wrong. I'd spent the last week researching adverse possession with Rebecca. The legal principle was elegantly simple. You can't claim adverse possession when you had the owner's permission. Morton had explicitly allowed community use. Every witness would confirm that permission kills adverse possession claims dead than disco. But I let them dig deeper into their legal grave. Dolores announced their master plan, file a lawsuit demanding the town declare the lake community heritage, property, and seize it through eminent domain. Several neighbors applauded like she just solved world hunger. "We've already collected 150 signatures," she proclaimed, waving a petition like a battle flag. "The mayor supports preserving community traditions." That's when I stood up. The room went dead quiet, except for that heating system's death rattle. "I appreciate everyone's passion for the lake," I began, voice calm as Sunday morning church, "but I think there's been some confusion about the legal situation here." Dolores's smile turned predatory. "Mr. Thornfield, this is a community meeting about community concerns." "Perfect," I replied, pulling out my surveyor's report, "because I have some community concerns too." The paper rustled like autumn leaves in the sudden silence. "According to this professional boundary, S. Irvi, your access road crosses my property for 200Y. Every time you drive to your lakefront homes, you're technically trespassing." A woman in the front row gasped loud enough to wake the dead. Others started whispering like teenagers in detention. "Furthermore," I continued, "Mrs. Whitmore's dock extends 8 feet onto my underwater property. Has been for years." Dolores's face flushed redder than a stop sign. "That's ridiculous. We have rights." "Actually, you don't. Permission from the previous owner doesn't create legal easements. I'd learned that expensive lesson from Rebecca's Summit County case where similar assumptions cost homeowners $200,000 in legal fees. Larry, trying to save face, made his fatal mistake. Where's your proof of these alleged boundary violations?" I pulled out my phone and connected it to the community center's projector. The ancient machine hummed to life like a vintage washing machine. Within seconds, aerial photos filled the screen showing exact property lines overlaid on current roads and structures. The room erupted like a disturbed hornet's nest. People realized they'd been driving across someone else's land to reach their own homes. Worse, some of their docks, patios, and carefully manicured landscaping sat on property they didn't own. "This is extortion," Dolores shrieked, losing her composure completely. "No," I said quietly. "This is property law, but I'm willing to discuss reasonable easement agreements." That's when desperation made her stupid. "You can't prove any of this. Morton never kept records." I smiled, thinking of Travis's cardboard treasure trove sitting in my truck. Actually, he did. Meticulous records including documentation of property damage, liability concerns, and his plan to revoke community access before he died. The color drained from Dolores's face faster than water from a broken bathtub. "But here's what really bothers me," I continued, stepping toward the front. "Mrs. Whitmore has been selling homes with exclusive lake access as a premium feature, charging buyers an extra $20,000 to $40,000 for access to property she doesn't own." The room exploded into beautiful chaos. Voices overlapped as people realized they'd been defrauded. Someone shouted about class action lawsuits. Another demanded to see real estate listings. "This is all lies," Dolores screamed. "Fabricated documents." "Then you won't mind if we let the state real estate board investigate," I replied, along with the county prosecutor's office. Walking to my truck afterward, gravel crunching under my boots like broken dreams, I heard her final threat. "You have no idea what you started, Thornfield." Actually, I did, and it was going to be spectacular. 3 days after the town hall disaster, I was drowning in Morton's paperwork when I found the document that flipped this whole game upside down. Buried beneath decades of utility bills was the original 1890 mill deed. Not a copy, but the actual handwritten document with elaborate flourishes and ink that had faded to the color of dried blood. The musty smell of century-old paper filled my Kit Morgan as I squinted at the ornate script. Most of it was standard horse and buggy legal language, but one paragraph made my coffee go stone cold. Said, property includes artificial lake created by damming of Mill Creek, with downstream landowners bearing proportional responsibility for dam maintenance and structural integrity. I read it 3 times before the beautiful irony hit me like a lightning bolt. Old Mill Lake wasn't natural. It was created by damming the creek that flowed straight toward Willowbrook Estates. Every single HOA member who'd been treating me like a terrorist was legally responsible for maintaining the dam that held back 15 acres of water directly above their precious subdivision. The engineer. Drawings scattered across my table told the whole story. The 1890 mill operation needed reliable water flow, so they'd built a substantial earthen dam with stone spillway. 130 years later, that dam was still the only thing keeping millions of gallons from turning Dolores's neighborhood into an impromptu swimming pool. I called Rebecca, hands actually shaking as I dialed. "Garrett, are you telling me there's been no dam safety inspection in 30 years? Her voice had that prosecutorial edge that meant someone was about to get destroyed. Morton's got letters from the state going back to the 1990s. They kept demanding inspections, but nothing happened after he got sick. Sweet Jesus, do you understand the liability exposure here? If that dam fails, we're talking wrongful death lawsuits in the tens of millions. The next morning, I hired Pete Kowalski to inspect the structure. What he found was worse than my darkest fears. "Garrett, this thing's held together by prayers and good intentions," Pete announced, his boots making sick squelching sounds in the mud around the spillway. Morning mist rose from the water like ghostly fingers, while the smell of rotting vegetation mixed with exposed clay. Major concrete cracks, tree root damage, erosion undermining the foundation, one heavy storm season, and this whole thing lets go. He pointed to areas where water seepage had created sinkholes. "See this pattern? The dam's been slowly failing for years. When it goes, not if, when. You're looking at a 20-foot wall of water hitting Willowbrook Estates at highway speed." My stomach dropped thinking about kids playing in yards that could be underwater in minutes. Cost to fix it. Pete's calculator clicked like castanets as he ran numbers. Emergency repairs to meet state standards. Minimum $180,000. Full reconstruction with modern spillway and monitoring. You're looking at $300,000, maybe more. And the downstream owners pay for this. Every penny, that's what the deed says. And Ohio law backs it up completely. They've been living below a financial time bomb. The cosmic justice was almost too perfect. Dolores and her legal army had spent weeks demanding rights to my property while sitting on a liability that could bankrupt them all. They'd threatened lawsuits while owing me nearly $200,000 in deferred maintenance. But here's the beautiful part. I owned the dam, which meant I controlled their fate. I could demand immediate payment. I could petition the state for emergency repairs at their expense, or I could negotiate reasonable access agreements in exchange for manageable payment plans. Suddenly, Dolores's community rights seemed less important than avoiding financial apocalypse. My phone buzzed with Rebecca's text. "State inspector coming Monday. When this hits the news, insurance companies will drop every downstream policy like a hot potato." I smiled, watching mist across the water's surface. Time to teach the neighborhood about real community responsibility. My Kit Morgan table looked like a war room designed by a caffeinated engineer. Engineering reports battled legal documents for space, while coffee rings created modern art on Pete's dam diagrams. If you'd told me 6 months ago I'd be planning a neighborhood revolution over breakfast, I'd have suggested therapy. Now bring it on. Time to assemble the Avengers of property rights. Rebecca Santos was my legal nuclear weapon, the only lawyer who got genuinely excited about easement law. "Garrett, this dam situation isn't just leverage. It's a guided missile aimed straight at Dolores's empire." She laughed, papers rustling through the phone like autumn leaves. "We're not playing neighborhood politics anymore. We're talking public safety and massive financial liability." Pete Kowalski became my technical translate. Or, the retired county engineer could make concrete calculations sound like poetry, which we'd need when explaining to panicked homeowners why their dream property sat in a potential flood zone. Most folks think dams are like sidewalks. They just exist forever, Pete chuckled. Reality's about to give them a very expensive education. Travis Morton signed on as our historian and intelligence officer. His uncle's obsessive record-keeping was providing ammunition I hadn't known existed. Plus, Travis knew which neighbors were reasonable humans versus Dolores cultists. Half these people have been terrified of her for years, he confided. They just needed someone to show them there was another way. Maria Rodriguez from the Cedar Mills Gazette became our media ally. She'd been quietly investigating HOA tyranny for months, collecting horror stories about Dolores's authoritarian tactics. This woman's been a one-person constitutional crisis, Maria said. Time someone held her accountable. The wild card was Father Ben Murphy, Officer Murphy's younger brother, but blessed with actual integrity. Despite family loyalty conflicts, Father Ben had a reputation for fairness that could neutralize his brother's obvious bias. If things got nasty, we'd need a respected voice calling for sanity. Our legal strategy unfolded while morning coffee steamed against my Kit Morgan window. Rebecca outlined the timeline. We file the dam safety violation Monday morning. State inspector arrives within days. Once he confirms Pete's findings, every downstream owner gets certified letters about their liability exposure. Their insurance companies get copies too, she added with prosecutorial glee. Nothing motivates homeowners like the prospect of losing coverage. Pete spread his engineering drawings like battle maps, the smell of old paper mixing with fresh anxiety. Here's the reality check. That dam hole, DS2, 8 million gallons of water above their subdivision. If it fails during spring floods, Dolores's house goes underwater in under 3 minutes. The financial education campaign was crucial because most folks had no clue what they were facing. Emergency repairs would cost each household roughly $2,400 in back maintenance. Full reconstruction around $4,000 per house, but lose lake access entirely because the dam had to be demolished. Property values would crater by $30,000 to $50,000 per home. Basic math makes the choice obvious, Rebecca explained. Pay reasonable maintenance and keep lake access, or watch your biggest investment become worthless. Maria took point on investigating Dolores's real estate fraud while we handled the dam crisis. I've got 3 buyers ready to go public about the lies she told them during sales. Exclusive lake access that wasn't exclusive or legal. This could be the story that finally exposes her whole corrupt operation. Father Ben's role was community psychology. People are scared and angry, he observed during our Friday strategy session. They need solutions, not just problems. Show them a path that protects their families and investments, and most reasonable folks will listen. The technical preparation took forever because Pete insisted on translating engineering jargon into human language. We created visual aids showing flood patterns, timing, and property damage projections. The goal wasn't terrorizing people, but helping them understand reality without sugarcoating. My crash course in dam liability law revealed Ohio's beautifully clear statute. Downstream property owners share maintenance costs proportional to benefits received. Since all lakefront homes use the lake for recreation and property values, they all owed equally. Period. My electrician background actually helped design solutions. I proposed automated monitoring systems track water levels, structural stress, and weather conditions. Early warning sensors could alert residents to problems before they became catastrophes. Community-funded system would cost each household about $200 annually, chump change compared to flood damage. The compromised framework emerged from late-night planning sessions fueled by determination and too much caffeine, reasonable lake access during designated hours with maintenance costs spread through HOA fees, environmental restoration creating local jobs while improving property values, Christmas festival continuing with proper safety protocols and insurance. But we also prepared for total war if Dolores chose stupidity over survival. RICO suits alleging conspiracy, criminal referrals for fraud, individual trespass lawsuits against every homeowner who'd crossed my property line. As I organized our battle plan, wood smoke from evening fires drifted through the crisp air. Some neighbors would become allies. Others would follow Dolores into legal oblivion if she asked. Either way, Monday's inspection would end her reign of terror. The age of accountability was dawning. Sunday night before the state inspection, someone cut my electrical lines. I woke up to complete darkness and the acrid smell of burned insulation filling my farmhouse. Security system dead, refrigerator silent. Even my coffee maker sat lifeless like a betrayed friend. Outside, my truck wouldn't start. Sugar in the gas tank, according to the mechanic who towed it Monday morning. The real masterpiece was what they'd done to my trail cameras. Every single one repositioned to face the sky. Memory cards wiped clean. Professional job by someone who knew exactly where I'd hidden them. This wasn't random vandalism, Pete observed, examining severed cables with his engineer's eye. Someone wanted you blind and powerless for the inspection. Perfect timing. Inspector Davidson arriving at 10 a.m., and suddenly, I had no power, no transportation, no security footage. If I couldn't participate in my own property inspection, Dolores could spin whatever lies she wanted. That's when the anonymous flyers appeared. Every car in town had one tucked under windshield wipers. "Protect our families from dangerous outsiders," screamed in blood-red letters above a telephoto shot of me examining the dam, looking appropriately sinister. "Garrett Thornfield threatens to destroy the dam protecting our children," the flyer claimed. "He wants to flood our neighborhood unless we pay millions in extortion. This dangerous man has no regard for family safety. Masterful lies mixing just enough truth to sound credible. They even included a fake quote. "If they don't pay up, I'll open the spillway myself." I borrowed Travis's truck to reach the inspection, arriving as Inspector Davidson pulled up. The man looked like Central Casting's idea of a government engineer. Clipboard, hard hat, and the expression of someone who'd seen too many disasters. "Mr. Thornfield here about the dam assessment." Cue Dolores's grand entrance flanked by 6 HOA board members like a presidential candidate. Her smile could have powered every Christmas light in Ohio. "Inspector Davidson, thank goodness you're here," she gushed with that special tone reserved for authority figures. "We're desperately concerned about this man's threats to community safety." She handed him a manila folder thick as a phone book. "We've documented safety violations and inflammatory statements. This morning, we found evidence he's been sabotaging neighborhood infrastructure." My blood turned to slush. Whatever was in that folder, she'd been planning this ambush for days. Davidson flipped through pages, frown deepening with each document. "Mr. Thornfield, it says here you've threatened to open spillway and demanded extortion payments from residents." "Completely false," I replied, sounding defensive even to myself. "Multiple signed witness statements," Dolores added helpfully. "Residents heard him threaten to flood our neighborhood." Half the HOA board nodded like trained seals, either coached to lie or genuinely brainwashed by Dolores's propaganda. In small-town politics, the difference gets pretty blurry. But here's where Dolores made her fatal mistake. She got cocky. While Davidson examined the dam structure, she continued her character assassination for the growing crowd of neighbors. "This man has no qualifications to assess dam safety. We demand a second opinion from real experts." "Ma'am, I am a qualified expert," Davidson replied with the dry humor of someone who'd heard every excuse. "And these findings are extremely concerning." He spent an hour documenting every crack, every erosion sign, every structural failure with methodical precision. The preliminary verdict was worse than Pete's assessment. "This structure is in immediate danger of catastrophic failure," Davidson announced. "I'm recommending emergency action to protect downstream residents." That's when Dolores overplayed her hand completely. "Inspector, we've contacted the mayor about using eminent domain to seize this property for public safety."